Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Jeremias, Jman, Maneiro, Jman Seminars with our latest episode, MilleniWHO Talks. I think it's episode number 6. We're here with Gary Rogers. We're doing our MilleniWHO Talks where we are changing lives with real stories from real estate rock stars from across the United States. Gary, thanks for being here today.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jeremiah.
Maybe let's start with just an introduction, who you are, where you're from. You're from Waltham, Massachusetts. Hopefully I said that correctly. And just tell us a little bit about yourself.
That's right. So I've been in real estate for 30 years. I'm a broker owner, but I'm a selling broker owner here in Waltham. So it's just metro west of Boston.
Okay.
I have 11 agents, not a big office, but we're mighty but powerful. We have number 2 market share right now in a very competitive market. And, we like to do a lot of creative things for lead generation. And so a lot of it's lessons that I learned early on that I've repeated and updated from when I first started in real estate 30 years ago. Trying to think. So 1987, I worked for a large independent that actually was one of the first publicly held companies in the country, DeWolf, New England. At one point, they sold out to a big box company, and I ended up at Remax, and I enjoyed a lot of success there. I made Hall of Fame in 3 years, and so really loved, being into a different feel in a different company. And I've been with Remax ever since. I've been a broker owner for 6 years. And what else?
Well, let's start at the beginning, right? In the beginning.
Yeah, right.
How old were you when you started in real estate? And let's just talk about some of the challenges that you encountered, in your first year, 2 years in the business, because that's really what we're talking about here. Yeah,
for sure. So I was 27 years old. I was fresh out of the Air Force, where I served as a medic. My father had been in real estate for a little bit. He was also a small builder, and he became very ill. So I ended up being stationed closer to home and ended up leaving the military. And one of the first things he said to me, he said, you'd be really good at real estate. And we have this, a few houses to get sold. Why don't you get your license? So he introduced me to Dick DeWolf. And I loved it. I started right away, even while I was active duty for my last 2 months in the military. So I was 27. And it was a challenge. It's always a challenge when you're a younger person and you're dealing with somebody that's sometimes twice your age. They've been it's their third or fourth house, and they have a lot more experience sometimes than we did first starting out. But I was very lucky. I had a really good mentor, a good sales manager versus an office manager. The guy was into sales, and that helped an awful lot.
So this is 30 years ago. Right, you said you've been in business 30 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So would that put us to 1987 or so?
Late 87. Right? November 1987 is actually when I started.
And so I mean, real estate was a different time. Then internet didn't exist. Sure. Interest rates were high. I mean, it's not like people think. How was that getting started? I guess you didn't know anything else, so you couldn't say, well, interest rates are so high. They just were what they were, right? I mean,
there's always a reason for people to buy and sell no matter what the market is, and people forget that. They worry about, it's a horrible market. Are you kidding? That's when you're needed most. You're not needed when the market's so damn hot that, stuff flies off the shelf. You're not, you're all showboating because, you know that it's going to sell if you price it right. I mean, that's always the key no matter what market. So, I actually have made more money in tougher markets and been able to compete better because people don't know how to explain their value. And when you're 27, 28, 30, 32 years old, that's really tough. Back then, there was not a lot of younger people that were doing well in real estate. The only people that were younger coming in were usually brought in by a parent or a family member, kind of like I was. But when you're going head to head against, some of the veterans in the market, you really have to put yourself out there and separate yourself and kind of go where they're not going. And one of the ways I did that was my first mentor, again, said, let's pick a neighborhood, and we farmed it. And he taught me to research 4 or 5 years back and have a notebook, basically, of every single house that's ever sold in that neighborhood of about 220 houses. So I knew exactly what had sold 2 years ago for how much money, and I just kept drilling all that information. And the way to get leads back then, we actually did more mailings. There wasn't, Facebook or anything. Excuse me. So we came up with just a really inexpensive postcard. And it on the back, I couldn't afford a whole lot. Young family, new agent, not making a whole lot of money first 3 or 4 months. We had a postcard that basically said there are X number of homes for sale in your neighborhood in the price range of blank to blank. For more information of these homes, give me a call today. Or eventually it was go to my website and I have the 7 houses. But initially It was just that call for action because they are data hungry. And they respect the fact that if you know data really, really well and not too deep, just basic what things are selling for, and you can show that you know an area and a neighborhood better than anybody. That's how you win the battle when you're going against a veteran who's not going to know all of that stuff necessarily. I mean, they might, but they're not going to push it out front.
I mean, that's a really great point, because even though back then it was pre-internet, we didn't have the technology we have now, but that same concept applies every day. You're a new agent. There's no reason. You have a lot of time on your hands if you don't have a lot of clients to work with. There's no reason you shouldn't know the numbers, know your statistics cold. And really, if somebody says, how's the market? You should be able to what? Our median sale price is $123,656. That's up, 0.6% over last year, rather than the veteran who says, the market's great, houses are selling,
Right.
The canned presentation that they've heard from somebody else. So let me put that here. Know your stats, because that's something.
Yep, absolutely. And know your market. The other thing is, broker opens in market to market, I've found are very, very different on how they're looked at and how they're used. And, here we encourage our agents, and myself included, on tour day, whether they're serving lunch or not, get out there, get in the house, even if you don't have a client for it right then and there. You know that stuff inside and out. You've been inside the house. And invariably, you're either going to get a buyer that might work for, and you can describe the house extremely well and show that you've actually been in it. Or on the flip side, if you're in a listing appointment and they're saying, well, this house sold for X, you can say, you know what? Not only do I know it has an older kitchen, I've walked through it and it smells like, cat pee or, whatever. And so your credibility goes up a lot once you can actually say that I've been in that comparable sale, or I've shown that house before and the bedrooms are small. Let's go look at it, but I think it might be a little small. Let's see what you think. And so by having that firsthand knowledge that you can't get any other way, you got to use your feet. You got to get in the houses and get over the thresholds. And that's a mistake that I think a lot of agents make. Even do a market analysis, they start pulling them up and they've never been in the houses. We had MLS back then, but we didn't have, 20 pictures and virtual tours. And the way to do it was, at a minimum, at least drive, I would drive by some of the comps, and see, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it's on the corner of a major street. The address didn't give me that hint. So all of that kind of eyeball information that you can't really, get out of going online really does impress clients when you can describe an area. The other thing is people buy a neighborhood over anything else. And we focus a lot on the house has a new kitchen and a new this and a new that. And if you can't describe the neighborhood it's in, they're buying the neighborhood and it just happens to come with the house. You can always change a house. You can't change the neighborhood.
I think that's a great point. And I think so many people, I get an echo a little bit. But with broker opens in our market too, we have lots of brokers opens, and you hear agents say, oh, well, I don't have time for that. And really that should be a crucial part. And like you said, we appreciate if there's good food,
right?
But, regardless of whether there's good food or not, if you specialize or want an area, there's no reason why you shouldn't take the time to familiarize yourself with the inventory. Because I've, myself included, I've been in listing. Well, this household, you know what? I was in that house, and like you said, instant credibility. It doesn't matter how many years you have in the business, how many sales awards you have. Like if you want to specialize and set yourself apart from the competition, the key is to know the numbers and know the inventory. That's That's really great.
And in this market, it's really tough because a lot of agents don't bother with the broker opens. They don't feel like they need them. And frankly, they probably don't need them. So then, on Sundays, I don't do a lot of open houses. I work with some new construction mostly, but I'm out there too. Or if I'm available, I still work with some buyers, and I'll accompany them to the opens, and other people see that at the public open house. And if they don't have an agent, I've had people say, geez, you're a broker, you're with your clients, can I have your card? Because too many of us just said, go to the open house, give us a call if you like it. But that is another way to learn the inventory really quick. And, broker opens and visiting public opens, we're losing a lost art about networking and relationships. If you're going to be doing deals with these people either now or in the future, it's not just, going to the YPN networking and any of the other stuff that's going on and being involved, which I know we're going to talk about. But, show a little respect. When you go through a house, go through the house. Don't just eat the food. Take a few minutes to get to know the agent, introduce yourself. And especially if they're newer, they're going to be looking up at you. And, it's a negotiation thing too. If you're negotiating an offer and you've been respectful and truthful, you're going to get a better shake. If somebody I've met at a broker open at one of mine, in fact, I can tell you a bunch of times it's happened. And there's 4 or 5 offers, and I don't recognize a lot of the agents, or maybe I do recognize them, and I'm like, oh boy, that last deal wasn't so great, But I meet somebody and they seem pretty straightforward and honest. I'm gonna listen to them a lot more about their buyer. It's in my seller's best interest to make sure we have not just the money, the best buyer, but I want the best agent on there to make sure that deal's going to go through. So whether it's a broker open or public open, just get in the houses.
And I think that brings up a good point. Agents, if you're watching this and all of a sudden an agent walks through the front door, don't be like, what are you doing here? Invite them in, help them familiarize themselves with the inventory, with the property, what are the updates? Because they may not have a buyer today, but they'll have a buyer tomorrow. So that's a potential, person that could sell your listing. Don't feel threatened by them coming through the front door. Be welcoming and build that relationship, like Gary said. Yep. So you're rising through the ranks, 27, 28, 29, 30. You're in your 30s now. What made you then get involved into leadership in the local state?
Sure. Yeah. So I started getting involved in probably towards the late 90s. 2 things happened. One, I started taking CRS courses on the advice of a fellow agent, and I started really getting into education a lot more. Well, with education, you also understood that it was a bigger industry than just plopping a house here or there. And we had local councils that were part of our Greater Boston board, and somebody wanted me to run for the local presidency. And I didn't realize at the time that it also made you automatically a director on my local board, which is the Greater Boston Real Estate Board and the Greater Boston Association of Realtors. And so I learned a lot. I mean, the people that are volunteering to help, get the mission done with the trade associations and try to help their other realtors and member benefits and what kind of education courses we can offer. I found them all very, very helpful, and still have some close friends from the early days. And so it was just a matter of stepping up for responsibility, serving on different committees. I was very fortunate. In 2005, I was named the Realtor of the Year for my local board as well as the state. And that's about the time that I get introduced more to the state, thank you, to the state leadership. And I really enjoyed that too, because then all of a sudden it's a different level. It's not better, it's just different. You're looking at it from a little bit different perspective, and that has more national ties. And then just stayed involved there, ended up being president in 2009 for the state. And then in 2014, and I was involved with national, did some shares, a lot of committee work. And again, very, very invaluable skill sets that you pick up, interacting with people, learning how to run a meeting. It teaches you organization. There are a lot of transferable skills. And the networking was very, very powerful. There was one point when I was very active, 40% of my business was coming from other agents. That's a big number.
Wow. Yeah. Huge.
And then later on, I ran and ended up being the 2014 RVP for New England. I've been a state director for a long time. Next year, I'm coming off as a state director, but I'm going into next year as the chair of the meeting and conference committee, one of the co-chairs. And of course, it's coming to Boston next fall. So we hope we see everybody there. So that's about, my involvement. I've also been very involved in CRS. I love it. I've been doing a lot of special events work, running conferences, moderating for mastermind panels, and got to speak on a celebration last year. And just, and again, it's not about any one designation. It's about embracing education and just keep sharpening the knife. You just got to keep going at it.
So the question is, Gary, why don't you do more? I mean, really.
What am I doing in my free time? There was a time that I was overdoing it, and some people still think I might, but I'm still selling a fair amount of real estate that I'm happy with. I should end up the year about 14 or 15 million in volume. I don't have a team, so it does get, once in a while I have a couple agents here that will help me with listings and stuff if I need it, if I'm traveling. But it is addictive, and I see a lot of younger leaders coming in, and they love the sense of involvement. That's never been different. It's just more apparent now because there's a lot more younger people able to get into the business. And, they get the bug, and I get it too. I mean, it's really enjoyable. It's fulfilling. A lot of people overdo it. A lot of members overdo it and volunteer for too much. And I've seen their businesses really suffer for it.
So let's say this coming, working your way up through the leadership ranks, what were some of the challenges? Because I know when I started, it was something where I took it upon myself. Like my manager said, well, if you don't like what's going on, then do something about it and make a difference. And then I tried to get involved with leadership on the local level. And it took about 3 years really to get to where I needed to be, where I could even be elected to a position. So maybe tell me about that, not the struggle, but at least your strategy and how you worked from one level to the next. Just,
Sure. I was very fortunate because the people that were already involved were very proactive in getting their replacements. You always look to hire your replacement in a lot of businesses, and that's true in the realtor world. I've heard a lot of stories about people. I know somebody right now that has really had a hard time getting more involved because of the closed door type of thing in some of the smaller boards or in boards in general. And the way to do that, basically then just go to your state. You must know a state director. You must step up a little bit and join the local YPN, which will get you exposure. Attend the national conferences, and you'll meet people that can help you steer you in the right direction for involvement at the national level. Now more than ever, President Elizabeth Mendenhall has really pushed hard to get people that have never served on committees before. The selection processes are already over for next year, but this trend, I believe, will continue. Now more than ever, she's trying to introduce newer people into the national committees. So that trend also follows on the state and most locals. So I absolutely identify with what you're saying. Sometimes there's a little barrier to entry to being involved. And it may or may not be something that I think it's always a positive thing, but you also may want to look at, joining a CRS, the local CRS region and getting involved there. They have a similar kind of structure. They're a lot of fun because they base most of the stuff that we do there is purely productivity. I mean, that's what the designation is about, is education, getting better at what you do, and productivity. That's what we're here for. But, I would absolutely make sure that if somebody wanted to get involved, reach out to the state leadership, especially the treasurers and the president-elects. And can I buy you a cup of coffee? I just want your take on where I best can help or serve. And they'll love it. I mean, I get those calls and want some advice on what to do. And I've written more recommendations for people on committees after they've talked to me on the phone, even for 20 minutes. I'm like, you know what, this person gets it, and I'm willing to put my name on the recommendation. So that's the type of thing, is build that up a little bit. I don't know anybody that's in leadership that doesn't welcome a phone call and sharing their advice.
So that's a great point. One of the people who was instrumental in helping me get involved was our local president, who came to me, kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, why aren't you involved in leadership? And I said, it's not for lack of trying. I'm trying. And like you said, it was kind of a closed door, and she helped open those doors for me. Her name's Carolyn Stifler. If you're watching, thank you very much. Helped open those doors. But I think, and then it brings up a good point. You try for something for so long, and then you get excited, and then you're like, okay. And then people are like, you want to volunteer here? Sure. You want to? Sure. And then you're yesing to everything because you're so excited about getting involved and making a difference. How do you find that balance? Because you're so involved, and it's like you have to either you're volunteering all the time or you're selling real estate, or how do you find the balance?
That's an excellent question. It's kind of like it's two different bell curves. When you're putting your business together and running it like a business, you have to be efficient and you have to be systemized. When I had my family was young, I would get up. I still get up very early in the morning, but I get up and I actually drove the kids to school, and I was in the office by 7:30 in the morning, and I crushed it because nobody else was in the office. It was no distraction, and I was able to go leave the office at 2 or 3 and be home when the kids got off the bus. Long time ago. But even if I had to go back out for appointments, but the thing is, I set that in my mind that I only had a certain amount of time to get stuff done. I didn't let it take all day long, and I didn't, I'll get to this, I'll get to that. But I mean, that's one way to look at efficiency. But for the overall question about balance is people rush way too early to worry about getting a title. They're worried about being a chair of something, or they're running into leadership, and they're stressed to no end. They're not going to do a great job in leadership, being so distracted. They're just going to be along for the ride. They're not going to make a difference. And I don't know anybody that should be going into leadership just for the title. You have to love the work. And, next year I'm on a bunch of committees. I'm thrilled to just be in the trenches working on committees. I love that. That's what you should learn to love. And if you don't love that, you shouldn't be looking to get any more involved for titles. The other thing is some of our YPN people that are doing really well in business, they have to be very, very careful. It's great when you get called to be interviewed and go on panels and things like that. And you really should. It's fabulous for networking. And it makes you verbalize how you're doing your business. And you actually learn more about your own business when you have to explain it. But don't overdo it. Don't look to be the speaker of the week every place and everywhere. You have to stay focused on that business. But more to your point and your question, you have to balance it when your business when your past client business starts picking up. That's a good indicator of when it's probably, you'll realize you have a little bit more time to be involved. For us, this past year, that's all we focus on. We do 7 to 10 events. We have one tomorrow. I have to leave in a couple hours, 3 hours to go pick up Star Wars costumes. We're doing a Star Wars premiere. We rent the whole theater. So we do a lot of different stuff like that, restaurants and stuff. I think people will know when they're overdoing it, but if they pick up just a couple committees a year, that will give them a taste and the skill set of balance. And that's the only way to learn.
And I think maybe the power of no, right? I mean, they can say no. They could. That's a great point. Good leaders will ask. You're supposed to be asked. I was asked. Everybody's asked. That's how you get started. Not always. I mean, you should also look for the opportunity. But good leaders, once you've introduced yourself, they'll ask you to do a lot of things. And sometimes our leaders, incoming leaders, really overdo it and overwork somebody that's got a good skill set and is going to help them put together a really good year. And you do have to say no. It's very complimentary to be asked. It's great. It feels good to be asked to do stuff and to step up. But you do have to say no. I'm stepping back a little bit from some of the CRS work. I'm still very involved in CRS and attend Celebration, which is also another something else that the viewers might look at if they're not already. If not, talk to Lee Brown, and she'll tell you why you should be there. But this upcoming year, I've been asked to do a lot of things, and I've had to focus. The convention is going to be very busy for me, and I know I can't spread myself out. So yeah, you have to learn to say no politely. Just say maybe next year. Well, yeah, I know when somebody taught me this is I'd rather turn you down now than let you down later.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I can't overcommit myself. If if I do something, I want it to be 110%, and I don't want to spread myself too thin. I think any good leader is going to respect that, knowing that you can't do it because you feel that you can't give it your best effort. So let's say this now: benefits of what have you seen being so involved with leadership? What are some of the best times a newer agent or some younger generation might say, what's in it for me? Like, I don't see, I'm not getting a paycheck. Like, what's really in it for me? So maybe if we could answer that last question, as we start to close up here.
That's an awesome question. I've actually used the with them bit a lot. When I teach agents, it's like when you're sitting in front of somebody, always think that they're asking you out loud, what's in it for me? And go right to the value part. So the other thing that we haven't talked about is being involved is also being invested in RPAC. I was bitten by, I shouldn't say bitten, I really was exposed to the importance about being involved in the government affairs area with my first Washington trip in May with the mid-year meetings. And I've been a major investor for several years. I'm now a Golden Hour President Circle. The information, if you're staying on top of markets, you also have to stay on top of things like this tax bill where it's changing the capital gains. You need to be able to explain that to your client. And if you are involved, don't be afraid to let people know, hey, I'm a director of this, and this is the information the boards are sharing, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and this is what it means to you. What's in it for me? So there's a lot of different moving parts on how to use involvement and investment in RPAC to your benefit. The information you get and the exposure does add another level that your competition doesn't have. So we always really encourage our people to at least invest at whatever they can, at whatever level, but also stay on top of government affairs.
Well, I think you also touched upon it earlier that the relationships that you build outside of your local area, if you're on the state and national level, there's opportunities for referrals. Somebody says, hey, I'm looking for, I have somebody moving to Waltham, Massachusetts. I have a great guy now, Gary Rogers, is going to take good care of him, right? That's a big part of it.
Right. No, absolutely. And, everybody hands out 1,000 business cards at these conferences and everything. Sometimes what I'll do is we used to, at one point, there were a lot of people moving from our area to North Carolina. And I actually went down and took a CRS course based on creating referrals, a 210 course. And I wanted to make 152 new best friends, and I got 5 closed referrals. Because people traveling and relocating, they go down to see what it's like. They meet a realtor, and the realtor says, hey, I met a guy. Well, it's the same mentality when you go to these national conventions. You're not going to use every business card you ever get, but try to at least start a conversation, find somebody that's interesting. Try to keep in touch a little bit. Don't send them mailings of your listings. I don't know why I get those. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to refer you to somebody in Nevada. I don't know people in Nevada. But the networking part of it does kick in after a while. Everybody says, well, I've been to 3 conventions, haven't done it. Well, what have you done? Have you reached out to any one person? It's one bite at a time. Get to know somebody in a market and that's the other thing. You should know the relocation trends. You need to understand in your market, where are the people coming from? When the people are buying in your town, where are they coming from? That's the area that you should be doing some work in and getting to look for agents in upstate New York, because maybe that's where your people are relocating to. It takes a while, and it's not a finite thing. But, if you have that kind of mindset, it works.
Okay. Thanks, Gary. Now, in closing, we always like to end with, if you could talk to 27-year-old Gary, fresh out of the Air Force, and, we thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
But if you could talk to 27-year-old Gary or just somebody starting new in the industry, what kind of advice would you give them, being now you have 30 years of wisdom in the business? What would you share with them? Like what just a couple of little tidbits to be successful?
I can't say enough about how important it is to have a good mentor and more than one. You can only learn so much from one person. Maybe it's not all your style, but you're usually able to get some tidbits. I always look to other agents of every level. I love masterminding. I love getting people together at every experience level, tossing out an idea, and sure enough, they'll toss one right back, and better yourself. So I would definitely use the same advice that my first mentor did, was know your market inside and out. Understand that you're a profession, you're a professional. You should be developing that kind of reputation with other realtors. And education, embrace it. Don't overdo it with the designations, by the way. There's a point where you're just not going to retain it and it doesn't stay relevant. And I'm down to 2 designations. Not that I had that many more before. I dabbled in a couple, but find the ones that deliver for you, that they get the education out there and make you better. Don't take stuff just to have acronyms after your name. Realtors don't even know what all of them mean. So why confuse the public? That might even be a panel at the national conference on somebody, 10 minutes each and describing each designation and see if it's even for you. I may throw that together, but yeah, so I mean, just stay at it. Be financially careful. Don't over invest in too much of any one thing. Purchasing online leads, it works for some people and it doesn't work for others. I don't have I'm neutral on that. I dabble a little in realtor.com. I find they're pretty good leads. I have a good friend here in the area that's really heavy in Zillow, but don't overinvest and think that it's just going to fix your business. You have to fix the basics of your business first. And there's guerrilla marketing. There's all sorts of things that you can do that don't cost a lot. Sometimes we go way too heavy and send out 1,000 mailings and then complain we don't get anything. Well, you have to go an inch wide and a mile deep. My first boss said send only 200 cards a month, but send them every 3 or 4 weeks, and it works. So it's repetition without overdoing it, and not expecting miracles right away.
So repeat that one more time, because that's worth repeating. An inch wide, but a mile deep. Is that what you said?
A lot of, I think you'll agree. There's a lot of agents that get all excited about sending out a mailing. I'm going to cover the city. I'm going to send out 10,000 mailings, blah, 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 blah. And they'll do it once or twice, and it gets really expensive. They don't really look at a yearly budget, and they don't look at it for the long term. And then they complain that they didn't get any calls. Well, if somebody's not ready to sell, it doesn't matter how good your postcard is. You know what I mean? It's all about timing. It's that day or that week that they decide to start thinking about moving. And that's why you have to be drip it. You have to really get it on there. So, my early mentors and my sales manager said, look, this is how much I think you should spend for the whole year on your mailings, period. Cap it out. And then you need to space it out and time it that you're going to be able to hit everybody. And you also should know the market well enough. And the way to do that is to build. If you're going to do a geographic farm, I could talk all day about how to pick one of those, but start with 200 that those houses really well, and add on and expand out, or even mail to a like-kind neighborhood or the next move-up neighborhood. But again, that's getting into the weeds about farming. But when you do your efforts, do it so well. I used to have a business plan for everything, for doing open houses, past clients, mailings. Every single one of those, I used to pretend that if that was the only way that I could make a living, would I do it better? Would I do it differently? And the answer is yes. You shouldn't just dabble in a little bit of that and throw it all out there. So on the mailing, going an inch wide and focusing, but going a mile deep, go for the long run. It's about timing. People are not going to buy a house just because you have that pretty postcard. You have to hit them at the right time. If your vacuum breaks and somebody knocks on the door selling a vacuum, you may not buy the vacuum, but it's the idea that the next mailing they get, it's about timing. So you have to be in front of them consistently and don't expect results right away, no matter what it is, whether it's mailings or online ads and focused Facebook ads, which is definitely the new farming. Just be patient, but be budget conscious. Make sure you can have an ROI.
Okay. Gary, I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. I know you have a super busy schedule. Any quote or any little bit of motivation you want to end us with? Your favorite quote, what you live by, core value, anything?
Well, it's kind of funny. I read a lot of books, and my Kindle's loaded, but I have this one that's a little dog-eared that if you get a chance, the guy's name is Harry Beckwith, and he's got 4 of these books that have been out for a long time. And they're very easily readable. They're in one little, tidbits and about selling the invisible. And that's what we do. We sell an abstract vision about moving into their new home. Read a lot of those books. Make sure you have good business plans. Be consistent. Be conservative with spending the money until you can prove that it's an ROI.
All right. Well, let's give you a virtual round of applause from the virtual audience. Again, thanks for everybody who's tuning in. This is MilleniWHO Talks. Jeremias, Jman, Maneiro with our special guest, Gary Rogers, online, youtube.jmanseminars.com, as well as at Jman Speaks on Facebook. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a great day.
Thank you, Jay.